Hey folks, Paul Abernathy here. We got another lesson for you today out of our Fast Tracks program. I get questions from people all the time that say, Paul, how do I determine the minimum number of 15 amp or even if you choose 20 amp general use, general purpose, general lighting, receptacles, and lighting loads in a dwelling? So how do I determine how many 15 amp circuits I need to handle that general lighting load or that general use receptacle load? And general use meaning the receptacles that are in your bedroom or in your living room, things like that. Now remember, we're not talking about the small appliance brand circuits. We're not talking about the laundry brand circuits. We're talking about those general use type receptacles and general lighting that's in a dwelling unit. So the question I get asked is, well, is there a minimum? How many 15 amp circuits do I need? Or if I'm choosing to do 20 amp circuits for those general lighting and general use, how many do I need? Well, the code gives us that guidance on it, and I'm going to share that with you today. So let's get your code books, and we're going to go into the lesson. All right, so this is out of our Fast Tracks program. This is in Unit 6. And again, if you're not familiar with our trademarked Fast Tracks program, it really gets extensive in understanding the National Electrical Code. It's not just for exam prep. It's to teach you the National Electrical Code. So we have many students who are not just preparing for an electrical exam. They really want to learn how to utilize the National Electrical Code much better. Now, on today's lesson, we're looking at the 2023 edition of our program. So again, if you've got your 2020 edition or 2017, you can still follow along, but this one is based on the 2023. All right, so let's do some things here. So we need to know, where does the code tell us what values do we use to determine the minimum number of general lighting or general use receptacle loads that we need? Where do we get that from? Okay, so we have some neat call outs here. Oh, and by the way, we're in Unit 6, 1F for those that are following along in our Fast Tracks program. So you see this A right here, that's a call out. So we're talking about a 1,400 square foot single family or a one family dwelling. That's what we're talking about today. And we want to know how many 15 amp brand circuits that we need, the minimum the code prescribes. How many do we need in order to fulfill that need? And of course, we could have more than this. This is a minimum based on whatever our VA is on our calculation. So here's how we start this. So first of all, where do we go to get the value that we work with? We're going to go to 220.41. Okay, so that's the first place that we're going to go. So let's kind of go there in our code real quick. So here you see in 220.41, and this is unique to the 2023 edition. Okay, because if you were in the 2020 edition, you're going to be looking at 220.14J and all that kind of stuff. So this has been kind of redone a little bit for the 2023 edition of the National Electrical Code. So again, if you're jumping from cycle to cycle, things are the same, but just kind of moved around a little bit, okay? All right, so one of the things we want to cover here, we're doing a one-family dwelling. That's what we're doing today, but also the individual dwelling units for two-family dwellings or the individual dwelling units for a multi-family dwelling, okay? The minimum unit load shall not be less than 3 VA per square foot. Now, of course, our dwelling was 1,400 square foot, okay? Now, what all's included with that 3 VA? That's what the question we get from folks. And remember, this is not including the small appliance circuits. This is not including the laundry or any other individual brand circuit. This is only the general lighting and general use receptacles. And that would be like your lighting in your bedroom, your living room, things like that, right? Your receptacles in your bedroom and living room and things like that. A den, that's your general use receptacles. So what's included? Well, this unit load in this 3 VA per square foot is the unit load per square foot. Unit load includes the following lighting and receptacle outlets, and no additional load calculation is going to be required for these. So all of your general use receptacle outlets throughout your dwelling that are 20 amp rated or less, and that includes those that are connected to the circuits like here, which would be, for example, the bathroom circuit, or those that would be going to like a garage. There's no additional VA for those, okay? They're your general receptacle applications, nothing additional for that. Now, what about the receptacle in the front and the back of the dwelling that's required? Again, that would be all-encompassing, with that 3 VA per square foot. So no additional load calculation is needed for that once you do this 3 VA per square foot calculation. All of that's included. And then lastly, of course, the general lighting outlets. That is all your normal lighting that is throughout your house, okay? All of that is already covered in that 3 VA per square foot. So you can see that 3 VA per square foot covers quite a bit. Again, it's not covering those specialty loads like your small appliance, minimum of 2. It's not covering things like your laundry circuits and all that type of stuff. It's not covering those, okay? So keep that in mind. All right, back to our lesson here. All right, so now we know the dwelling is 1,400 square foot, and we learned just now that it's 3 VA per square foot. So you do 14 times 3, and that is 4,200 VA. So now we're going to start working things in VA. And once you have that VA, now you look back and say, well, what's the circuit? Since these loads that we're talking about are 120 volt loads, okay, they have a neutral component. We're talking about receptacles, the general use. We're talking about general lighting. So that's 120. So to determine the number of 15 amp circuits we need to take that 4,200 VA, and we need to divide that by 120, and that gives us 35 amperes. Okay, now once we have this value here, 35 amperes, now we can start thinking about the number of circuits. And remember, the circuit is based on the overcurrent device. So it's a 15 amp circuit, it's a 15 amp overcurrent device, typically going to be 14 gauge conductors, right? So we're saying, okay, well, I'm going to take that 35 amps, I'm going to divide that by 15 amp, which is the rating of the branch circuit, and that's going to give me 2.33. Now, that's the number of circuits. Now, you can have a 0.3 of a circuit. If I need to have, and it's over 2, I need 2.3 circuits. Well, obviously, you can't have a 0.3 of a circuit, so we're going to round up to the whole number. So I need a minimum of 3 15 amp branch circuits to satisfy 4,200 volt amperes, which ultimately worked out to 35 amps. Okay, so we need at least 3. Now, can you have more than that? Absolutely, you can. This is just a minimum. Okay, so if the 15 amp circuits are installed for general lighting and general use receptacles that we just covered in 220.41, then you need at least 3 circuits are required to be able to satisfy that requirement. Okay, now what if you choose, and this is your choice, what if you choose to, instead of doing a 15 amp branch circuit for those receptacles in a bedroom or living room, or what if you want to do everything in 12 gauge and you want to do 20 amp circuits? Well, that's perfectly okay because, 220.41 says 20 amperes or less. All right, so everything's exactly the same. All right, you take that 1,400, you multiply that by 3, you're going to give you 4,200 volt amperes or VA. Then again, there's still 120 volt circuits. So you're going to take that 4,200, you're going to divide that by 120. It's still going to be 35 amperes. Now, here's where it changes. Instead of taking that 35 amps and dividing it by 15 because they were 15 amp circuits, now you're going to do it by 20 because these are 20 amp circuits that you're wanting to use. Now remember, don't confuse this. It has nothing to do with your small appliance branch circuits, has nothing to do with individual branch circuits, has nothing to do with your laundry. This is just the general lighting and general use. You chose to make them 20 amp circuits rather than 15. That's a choice that you get to make in a dwelling application. All right, so in this case, 35 divided by 20 is 1.75. Well, just like we did before, you can have 0.7 of a circuit. So we're going to round up to 2. So I need to have 2 20 amp circuits to supply that general lighting and general use receptacle application. Now, can you have more than that? Absolutely, you can have more than that. This is just the minimum requirement by the National Electrical Code. And again, I have to reiterate, this has nothing to do with the requirements that you would have for your minimum of 2 small appliance branch circuits or your laundry branch circuits or any individual branch circuits that you might run to something in this dwelling. This is only for how you calculate the minimum number of general lighting and general use receptacles in your dwelling. You most certainly could have more than this. That's going to be part of your design, but the NEC wants to make sure that you establish a minimum value. Okay, so hopefully you got something out of this really quick lesson, trying to establish how to determine the minimum number of general lighting and general use branch circuits necessary, depending on whether or not you use 15 amps or 20 amps in a one-family dwelling. Hopefully you got something out of today's lesson. We'll catch you next time.